but it's meant to be really good for you.
I'll just hit the record button. Yeah, it's yeah, but it's supposed to be really good for you, though, I reckon. So yeah,
Yeah, we
I'm just
watch it.
talking to
So
Ricky about
right,
my sauerkraut that I've made. So welcome everyone to another episode of Beta Talk. I'm joined by my good friend Ricky. Ricky is the inventor of something called Thoroughflush, which a lot of the good engineers he and I know use. Lots of people use it; they love it. So he's very much involved in this whole thing around keeping systems clean and protected. So thank you to my sponsor. That's Primary Pro, which is a professional pipe lagging system that again lots of the good engineers out there are now using. David and Ricky know each other. They both support each other and the work they do. Um, so Ricky, welcome to the show. You have been on before, but crikey, I don't know when it was now. It was a long time ago.
bloody hell, about 4 years ago, wasn't it? I think we launched Thoroughflush 5 years ago in January. We've been selling now, so
So just
came on
explain
pretty
to
soon.
the listener what thorough flush is, and then I'll probably dive into a little bit of a story around this whole thing of the industry at the moment and sort of the water protection market. What does the actual market call itself? I can't remember. I mean, obviously we know the chemical inhibitor companies are the big guns that like to sort of
Yeah, I think they're the only ones involved at the
wa-
domestic level at the minute, aren't they? Or they want to keep it that way anyway.
water
So yeah,
treatment.
Thoroughflush
Yeah.
was a product I invented because I struggled flushing systems with this other stuff on the market, and I just come up with this idea and tested it and tried it and didn't get any funding for it, and it just happened to go to market. Just it was one of those. I had enough money to get a few of them out there, and I gave a few out on Twitter to Keith Harrison and remember Dave White, who we met at the AD Lab years ago,
Mm,
2018, when we went down there,
mm,
and
yeah.
it just went mental overnight. It just went crazy, and we're in 5 years now, and it's still selling pretty well. It's compact, so people
Well, it's
love
a
it
good
really.
product. People, people that are used to clean training systems down and cleaning them out, you can see that yours works a lot better in a lot of ways, can't you?
Yeah, it's not the only thing on the market. Like I say, there's other methods out there, and it's just another bit of ammunition in your kit, isn't it, really?
So we're going to talk water treatment. So that's the market I was trying to think. And so water treatment is a very big market in the UK, and it's dominated by the chemical inhibitor companies. Now these are big companies. I mean, Fernox was the first. Um, great story behind Fernox. I think it's 60 years or 60-year anniversary was last year or the year before, I think. So Peter
Yeah.
Maxwell, a German but probably chemical background, but he noticed a problem with his own system getting a bit crudded up. So he invented a chemical inhibitor to try and prevent heating systems from getting crudded up. And back then, actually, they recognised that was because high temperature systems, heating was a very high temperature, and there's a physical law that the higher the temperature, the higher the rates of corrosion. And Fernox was cool. It was called Fernox actually because it's something to do with ferrous non-oxide. It was a play on them letters, and went on the shelves the year I was born, 1971. And it's became a big market. So obviously you've got other players now in the market. They all come together to write their British Standard 7593, which Ricky and I will talk about in a minute. They're all members of the HHIC. Hugely competitive because, like I say, these are massive super cup. I mean, Fernox got bought out by oh God,
The
McDermott.
Alpha Fry, is it?
No, Element Solutions or something, or McDonald Ethone Industrial Solutions. But it was I mean, some of these companies have parent companies, and you often find that it's a lot of companies buy up little companies. We never know about it. I mean, they're in 38 countries, Fernox. And that's one of the things, interesting things that sparked this conversation, wasn't it, Ricky? We saw a photograph that our friend Damon had put on LinkedIn of a bit of Fernox that was related to what you and other good engineers have been promoting. And it doesn't mean you have to be a good engineer to use this. What we're saying is some engineers find other ways and methods of doing things, and that's what they end up preferring if they feel like it helps them and suits them. And in
Yeah.
this country, for some reason, the chemical industry hasn't helped them engineers at all. It's steered away from the conversation, mass marketing about that one product it does, and yet it seems on the continent they're doing what you are doing, Ricky.
So yeah, I think that Damon put that picture on LinkedIn, I think, wasn't it? Or it might have been Twitter. So obviously the chemical companies are seeing a change in attitude of installers in the UK now, and they're realizing it does work. I know there's been a lot of pushback from it. They've probably been testing it, and they're obviously protecting the market, aren't they? And rightly so. They want to protect the business, but to see a unit like that on sale from a world-leading chemical company, you think they must know it does work. And it's weird how something can work in Germany and not in the UK, like they say. So
Well,
it will
it,
happen.
it was the Germans that sort of come up with this method, what we call VDI 2035, wasn't it? And it was a different method to using chemicals to keep systems clean, and
Yeah,
prevent corrosion. And it just seems a bit strange that in another country they are using that, but in this country, that demineralization is the equipment you would use for VDI. But in this country, they don't seem to. And we all know chemicals do work. Good chemicals. I mean, there's some rubbish out there because it's a massive market, but good chemicals work. But you have to use them in quite a scientific manner, more of a scientific manner than any of us engineers have grown up. I mean, when we used to buy our MB1 bottles back in the day, people were just tipping them in the F&E tanks left, right, and centre. And even today, there's people just put a you know a, they pour it in. No real. It's not being measured scientifically. No one really knows whether it's a molybdate one or a nitrate one or a citrate one. So when it comes to testing, that's a big problem. That's something you've actually been trying to push back and get the chemical industry to. Um,
yeah. So was it a couple of years ago, I joined the HHIC, and I thought maybe I can get my voice known here and tell them about it. So we had a couple of meetings with them. They invited me to one of the water treatment groups, some other installer meetings involved with DESNES and company places, people like that, and they were great. They listened, but you just can't change that industry. So I did have a meeting with them one day, and it was about writing a standard to do like a like a guide how to do flushing and system treatment. And then I found out they'd had meetings and had not been invited. So that was I asked for the minutes for the meetings, and they told me they'd not been wrote. So I just kind of shut the door on them and withdrew my membership. Then I thought it's definitely not for me. I've obviously seen to them as an industry disruptor, Anna, because I'm promoting chemical free other methods of water treatment, and they didn't like what I had to say, I don't think, because they're all selling chemicals. And when I made them aware of, you tell them you've got to adhere to Part L, which is building regs. That transfers you to the BS7593 that says you've got to test for water every year. So test on commissioning for the dose rate and test every 12 months, I think it says in section 10. But there was only one product at the time on the market, which was Fernox, that offered any test data. So on the bottle of Fernox, you've got a little QR code and a little molybdate chart, and it tells you roughly where it should be, what parameters. So I think it's about 80 ppms in molybdate to 100 ppms is adequate protection for Fernox. But none of the others were offering that. I'd spoke to different chemical manufacturers, and they said, "Oh, we don't offer any test guidance." I was like, "Well, how can you claim to be BS7593 compliant if you can't offer anyone the test?" And they just shut the doors on you. They don't want questioning. They just don't want to know you.
so just to let the listeners know a little bit about this, a British Standard 7593 was written originally. Oh, crikey, when was the original? 2006.
2006, the first
Oh,
one.
2006, yeah, and then 2019,
19.
and then
And I
they've had
think
a bit of an
it's been an
update,
update.
2024, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I've not seen it. I did pay for something a while ago, but I've not
But
seen.
part of that is that you test the system. That's part of that British standard that they wrote. But like Ricky's point has discovered, and so many else have discovered, is it's actually there are hard ways to test it because what you actually tested for because a lot of these manufacturers use different chemicals, don't they? So some of their
Yeah,
test kits aren't going to work. So you can go with someone's test kit, test the water, and it won't tell you if anyone else is inhibitor in it. Have I got that? This is for the
yeah,
labour.
that's right. Yeah, so I know that a couple of the big boiler manufacturers are issued an AD Pro check, so I've been told, and their engineers will go out, test the system, and then say there's no inhibitor in it, and it's because that's only testing for molybdate. Now there's other products on the market, their own branding. There's the I think it's Scale Mass, which uses nitrate. They have their own eye strip test, but that can be rebranded for City Plumbing, Poachings, which is the Instinct Group, and it's difficult. You can't get the information. You ring the technical departments up, and they just don't like what you're asking. And the, some of them now have said, yeah, you need to buy our test kit, but we shouldn't have to ring a manufacturer. So I'll go for this scenario. Wolseley sell an inhibitor under the Centre brand. So it's a cheapish inhibitor. It's molybdate based. You ring Wolseley up to get the data to test for. They don't have it. They send you the data sheets. There's no data on the data sheet. You ring them back. So then you could then go back to the manufacturer, which you get told it's AD who make that product for them. You go to AD. They don't have it. They transfer you to the lab or a sales rep, 2 or 3 phone calls with a sales rep. And then I think it took me 7 days in total. I got through to the lab and he told me what I need to be testing for. So why should an engineer who's been told he's got to test for products every year go through that whole journey, wait 7 days? It's simple. Put it on a QR code, bang it straight on the bottle, put it on the sticker that you take off, put it on the boiler. Then someone can scan it. There's a link to our test kit for this product. They sell test kits then, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, it should worth be pointing out. I think Fernox, they're the only ones that do this, don't they? They have a QR code or something
There is
on it.
another one. So Dosafil, John Lynch, who worked for Sentinel, went to Dosafil. He obviously seen me spouting off about it on socials, and within 48 hours, he had a QR code on his bottle, on his thingies. He's no longer present at Dosafil.
Do AD do it?
AD don't do it now. No one does it. There is another major brand in the flushing world, and I spoke to the director last week, and that they are changing it. So they're rebranding for this.
So just to recap for the audience, and sort of, I want to get the audience understanding why we're having this discussion. So the water quality in your heating system is actually quite fundamental. You know, it's actually common sense. If it's really dirty water, it's going to sod up some of the equipment that's been installed on your heating system. Always been a problem. It's always been known to be a problem. And obviously, I mean, back in the day, the we had central heating systems, not in domestic, but they central heating systems come from sort of the industrial age and commercial sector. So any of the elder people out there remember things like Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, he was down in the basement going mad because there was lots of men all over the US and places like that down in basements shoveling coal into boiler rooms, and you had to basically live down and stay down there because you're relying on the water to move naturally around the whole campus. There was no pumps. There was no circulation pumps. So it was very clever science. You know, water becomes less dense when it gets heated, so it will rise if there's colder, more dense water pushing down. So you could make these sort of loops. We called them gravity systems, and that was thermosiphon that pushed all this water around. You know, very, very, very hot water. And because if you get very, very hot water with ferrous metals, it causes massive corrosion. So there's always been this thing of like, how do we prevent corrosion? How do we prevent corrosion? And these markets sort of were engendered, and they are huge markets now. And like I say, you know, you've got parent companies like Fernox's parent company, obviously, is it was recognised all the other markets in the countries, so they're doing what them countries like. So you know, countries like Germany went the VDI 2035 route, demineralising the water, and that's what Fernox are doing. It looks like, because what we should say is that photograph was a friend of ours. He took a photograph when he was at the HHIC, which is a big trade show in Germany, and he's just come back, hasn't he? And that was the photo. He took that
Yeah.
photograph, and it made us all think, because I suppose it's okay for Fernox and all the other chemical companies to sort of just go with the flow in this country because that's their market, that's what's working. But what I kind of find upsetting is when engineers like you and the others are looking for different bits and pieces of best practice, have found a method that works. It's as if they're challenging what you're doing. You know, they never sort of give you any sort of welcome feedback, and it's just constant marketing from their end that, you know, that their system is the only system that works. And actually, it can work if it's good and used scientifically. But at the moment, because it's such a mass heterogeneous market, everyone's dived in. I mean, there must be so many OEM products in the chemical inhibitor market, so
Oh
many.
yeah, a lot of them go through the NSF, chemical inhibitor approved scheme. So they get tested in an approved lab. And well, we got shown that at AD, didn't we, when we went to look at the Coupon test? They go through that glass jar for like 270 hours. And I think they use Evian water for hard water and Aquapura for soft. And but the clean metal coupons, they're not using corroded steel that's already in an existing system. So, but they pass the test, and I'm a great believer anything that's passed that test should have a test kit with it, shouldn't it, really?
Well, as we know, a lot of that stuff being tested at 80 was actually corroding the metal, wasn't it?
Well, that's what they tell you, but you don't know what we're there for, do you? It's it's one of
I-
them, but it's good to see them
I've got that
pushing
on
those
video.
kits in Germany, and I think it's they obviously see there's going to be a shift in the market in the UK, and we sell a few demon units, we sell test kits, we advise on better methods in the UK, the lads out there and the girls out there, they're doing it, and it's just working, isn't it? And you speak to the old boys, then they ring up saying, "Bloody hell, I've not used inhibitor. I used to lash it in the back of the van and never use it, never had any failures with diverters and things like that." And it's just a simple method, really. Everyone gets scared of it when they see all this kit and computers and test pens and reagents and stuff like that, but it is a simple way. It's just how our industry's been marketed, unfortunately.
I think one of the things that listeners may not appreciate is obviously go back in the day, a lot of the parts, components, appliances were metals. But now there's so many different materials now in heating systems. You've got all sorts of different materials in
You
boilers.
look at a heating system from years ago, we had an ideal classic with bomb proof. If we everyone had an ideal classic, this industry we wouldn't exist, would we? Because there'd be no boilers getting replaced. The odd fan would go every now and again. There'd be no issues, but systems were all virtually open, weren't they? Because no one had TRVs. They just had wheel lock shields on one end, wheel heads on the other. No one shut the radiators.
And this
It's
chemical
crazy.
soup can deteriorate certain materials. They might have been designed for certain metals, but because yeah, they did. I think back in they changed their formula back in the did they change it back in the late 80s? Maybe from to citrate based formula when we started to use a lot of aluminium in boilers. So yeah, they've always innovated, but it seems that the chemical companies have got to a bit of a standstill because they're thinking, oh, the whole world's now looking at the industry. It's all about efficiency. I mean, the amount of claims they put in their marketing about it will make your system efficient, but they forget it's
Yeah,
the
I
whole
don't know.
system. It's the whole system that's making a system efficient. There's all sorts of things going on. You don't just go and pop in an inhibitor and it makes it efficient. But people do
Yeah, I'd
forget.
like to see how they're tested. It's not just go to a system, put a bottle of chemical in, and it makes it 15% more. It's been flushed, hasn't it? So
Yeah, exactly. And
that's
it's
flushing
this
and
mixed messaging in marketing. It's I think doing a disservice to the industry.
yeah,
The marketing people are really sort of got to sit together and think, crikey, lots of people are now looking at this industry. There's a lot of clever homeowners and customers out there that are incredible. Their knowledge around heating is immense now.
Do you know what? I've noticed that in the past few years, there's people out there, homeowners that are probably cleverer than me and a lot of other people out there. Like one of is it Mick Wall?
Mick Wall, yep,
He's a
yep,
proper energy nerd, isn't
yep.
he?
He's been on the
Like
podcast.
real nice bloke, but
Oh, they're loving it. They're loving the science, and I know people at the department, the energy department, some of the civil servants, they're loving learning about all this stuff because it can be quite interesting because you can sort of also attach what you learn in the science to sort of real world. Everyone's got a heating system, for instance, in their homes,
yeah,
majority of people. Um, and it's becoming a bit of an exciting thing. And of course, they're all seeing this whole massive industry. We're talking big players worldwide here,
yeah, definitely.
and their marketing is kind of in a it's not innovating how it should like the rest of us are. So we've got engineers out there, sort of a bit of a renaissance, and people are starting. Look at people like Damon, doing really good boiler installs 4 or 5 years ago. Now hit the road completely running, doing
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's gone.
all sorts of heat pump stuff. So you've got lots of engineers inspired by each other, and if you get these marketing messages that are still going down this narrow road and not listening to engineers, it's going to stall the transition a little bit.
I think our look at the marketing, they've got at the end of the day, they've got to sell products, and we all need to understand that, don't we? They're there. They've got to hit the margin. They've got to hit the targets. Every sales rep's got to get there, and they want to sell more of this and more of that. And I know renewables is booming at the minute. It's mental out there, isn't it? What heat pumps are just going to be the way forward now. And people saying, "Oh, you need to do open loop and this and that." You're removing products from the system now, and they're not selling stuff, are they?
Well,
They're not selling the
the
zone
chemical
valve, the thermostat.
industries have approached all the heat pump manufacturer? Because obviously this thing about antifreeze, because obviously the chemical industries, they're just seeing that as a new little avenue for them, antifreeze, and things like biocides, because now all of a sudden everyone's talking
Well,
about
that's another one. Let's
low.
biocide is a product you can't test for. So I've spoke to a lot of the manufacturers and said, right, Section 10 of the British Standard says I've got to test for that when I've commissioned and every year, and they're like, you can't test for our products. So like, well, it's not part L compliant then, is it? You can't test for it. No, but you don't need to. You just redose it every year. But I said it doesn't say that on the bottle. It's 20 quid for a bottle of biocide. No one's going to go keep lashing it in. What effect is that having on the system? It's no one's telling you. And it's
Mm.
only if you start measuring corrosion levels and pH and conductivity, and there's just nothing there, is there? And
See,
I get loads of phone calls saying, I've put this in it, I've put the inhibition of biocide, the sight glasses are black. And I'm like, well, if you want to stick to the guidance or do one better and go chemical free. Because a
yeah.
lot of the manufacturers, Viessmann, I think Valent allow it, Nibi have joined partnership with Fernox last 2 years ago, didn't they?
I don't
I
know.
think
I
a
know. I
few of
know.
the others.
Fernox joined. They joined the Heat Pump Association.
But then again, that's down to money again, isn't it? Really, funding for another another group. But I just say to people, if you want to do one better, and you've got to find now that a lot of your heat pump engineers, they're more into system design, aren't they? So no one teaches about expansion. There's not one course I've ever seen where it's talking about expansion sizing, location of vessels, and things like that. And that's a massive part to play. It's probably you get away with it more in a heat pump system, I would say, because you've not got your high temperature like swings, have you? You're not getting up to 75, 80 degrees and then off. The system's off for the night and it's sucking back in, contracting. So you're not going to be dragging oxygen. And there's all things like that. Auto air vents on high temp systems. Are they actually closed when the system's contracting? I'm no scientist. I'm not an amazing, well, I can fit boilers and pipes and things, but they're
Well,
going to
there's
be
a bit of a
submerged,
science.
aren't
There's quite a lot of science behind this whole thing of keeping a system clean. Because obviously, for obvious reasons, we want to keep a system clean because that increases the longevity of whatever you're heating your home with. But we've got this situation where there's this huge mass market that's all dived into that keeping your heating system clean market. We can look at the magnetic filters in a minute, and the information that's coming out is all marketing information. And as nice as it might be, there's some lovely stories behind some of these companies. There's a lovely story, entrepreneurial story behind AD. Chris AD was a gas engineer, started up AD. Lovely entrepreneurial story. Some good stories behind this, but fundamentally, out there in the real world, people's systems are still corroding,
they?
and
Yeah.
that's the fact of it. Yeah, we've got millions and millions of. I mean, that magnetic filter. I'm trying to think when it came to market. So I think so. Fernox's magnetic filter, which was Boiler Buddy, when it came to market around 2005. Now, the story goes that Chris Adey approached Fernox, who were leaders in the water treatment market. He had this idea to make a magnetic filter. Approached them, they didn't want to know, so he went away and built up his own company, and
Right.
look how big that got. Um,
The filters were used, I think.
well,
The
filters have
oil
always
manufacturer had a cyclone filter. I think
exactly.
Stantec have had a cyclone. It's a great
Filters have always
invention,
been
isn't it?
around. You just literally put a pipe into a even larger pipe, a much larger pipe, call it a pot, and velocity drops and your sediment drops to the bottom, and you can have anticyclone type things. And of course,
Well, I've always said like radiators are just low velocity areas, aren't they? So that's why your radiators are
that's
full of sludge all the time. So just
yeah,
it's lead in there, so it just collects in the radiator.
yeah, exactly. You got a certain velocity running through. You have the same flow rate running through a 15 mil pipe and your radiator, the same flow rate, but velocity changes depending
Yeah,
on the diameter of
yeah, definitely.
where it's flowing through. So yeah, you stick it into a little a chamber type thing and then come out the other end. Velocity drops but the magnet thing was something that Chris decided was a good idea as well. I'm not saying it's not, but what it showed was in this industry that he created it, he manufactured it, and then Fernox dived on it, made their one, and then all of a sudden you've got 40. I think I was told 46 different OEM products out there that everyone makes one basically.
Everyone's doing it, aren't they? It's the same. I got approached when I launched Thoroughflush by a supplier from Europe about putting a under boiler magnetic filter on the market, and it was reasonable cost. And I thought it's not my game. I'm new to the market. I've financing it through my own pocket, and I just thought it's a great idea, but I thought there's that many the market's saturated with
It's a great
filters. You
idea,
can
but
just
essentially it's just a filter on a system. You know, all fluid systems have filters, whether it's your brakes
yeah.
on a car, hydraulics on a crane, and
This
any
one, this filter was like
beer
an
line.
underboiler one, and it was a great looking filter underboiler, and I thought it'd probably sell all right. It's not going to make loads of money, and then 18 months ago, 2 years, Fernox dropped theirs on the same, virtually the same design, dropped theirs on the market. This year, Radio have launched theirs, and it's just copy, isn't it? With all these companies, they see something good and they're just copying it.
Well,
And it's
I think the good clever marketing people are going to realise that we got to just follow the good best practice because you can't argue with best practice. Let's take another industry. Let's take like the food industry. So you're always going to get, you'll get every now and then the media will tell us eggs are good for us, then they're not good for us, and then red meat's good for us, then it's not. And you'll have studies that are backing up both positions. So there'll be
yeah,
academic studies that back up both. So the food industry that wants to sell us crap can actually say, well, it's not unhealthy, and here's the evidence. And so you never really, well, you instinctively know, I think, what's good and healthy. But with our industry, you can't refute it. It's thermodynamics is the law. It's the physics, and things like increase of temperature increases the rate of corrosion and things like that. And yeah, I don't think in that British standards they mention temperature at all. They might have done. I mean, because they know me very well, and I know I'm very critical of that market, and they have had a revision. I'm not going to pay for it. I've paid twice already for their
the
British
thing is
standard.
that document, it's best part of 180 quid. It's not that great. It says you need to do flush, like it says mains flush, gravity flush, power flush, and I think they might include the magnet flushing now. So I think Neil Watson, is it Neil Watson from AD, got that included somehow. But there's no like guidance. So if you look at the BG, what's that one there? The BG 50
50.
2021 document for commercial, it's 120 pages and it talks about all kinds of corrosion, different chemicals, different things. And it's like you're getting a system that's going bigger. So why not have the same kind of document for
And they mention other methods in the BG50, don't they?
oh, they mention all kinds. So yeah, about don't know if it mentions VDI. It mentions like demineralized water and the reaction tanks, the electrochemical reaction tanks we just started selling. We get them off Simon, and it's just a great document. So if it works in commercial, it's going to work in domestic, isn't it? That's my theory. But don't dumb it down. And when you look at the British standard, everyone who sits on it will own a filter company or a chemical company. There won't be anyone on there who's not
Well,
invested in the industry.
I did a podcast episode before because when they got their British standard mentioned in the Part L approved document, which is to do with the building regulations, and I think they got that mentioned in 2021,
June
22.
22, I think it was.
And some of the companies then started to market the fact that inhibitor is now mandatory. And I had to
Yeah,
point out to them that most of the Part L document is all guidance. Most of approved documents is all guidance, unless unless the text is written in a green box in that
yeah,
approved document. It's not the requirement. It's not the actual requirement. It's just guidance on how to meet the requirement. And there is a requirement which basically is commission your systems. It doesn't go into too much detail. Then you've got all the guidance. But the requirement is you commission a system, and of course that includes testing. So if we're using these chemical inhibitors, or we've gone to a system, and we want to know if it's got the right amount of inhibitor in, as you've pointed out, there's no way of testing. There's absolutely no way
exactly. Yeah,
unless you have everyone manufactures different types of casket, but that doesn't make sense. So unless that chemical inhibitor company industry realizes they've made a bit of a faux pas there by writing that British standard, going all into a deep one about testing, and then haven't actually given us the means to test. They're keeping very quiet about it. They have got test kits. They'll say, yeah, but no, we've got test kits. But that's not the point. You each use different chemicals, so your test kit isn't going to work on testing someone else's and to
yeah,
see if it's.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. And
So
that's the problem, isn't it? That's what got my back up in when they changed it. I think I went to install a show and it was one of the companies is saying it's law, telling people it's law, you've got a test for it. And I was like, you can't tell people it's law and then not provide a test kit. And that's why I mentioned it to the HHIC because they were going to bring a an industry-wide test out a few years ago based on alkalinity, and I think it got withdrew probably because other companies had invested too much in test kits, maybe. So money talks when you start talking to these organisations. It's all about your annual turnover and your membership fee. So that probably got withdrew from that. So I think it's getting taken out of the benchmark. It did get told, but like I said, I just pulled away from the organisation because it wasn't where I wanted to sit really.
Mm.
So it's just difficult to test, isn't it? And I do say to installers, if you're getting involved with like flushing water treatment, stick with a product you know well. So your top brands are your Fernox, your AD. AD are heavily linked with, sorry, Fernox are heavily linked with Valent, I believe. So all their test kits that the engineers have, or when they take a sample, goes to a lab that's linked to Fernox. So they'll get their test. If an engineer goes out to a boiler and it's faulty, he could take a sample and send it to Aquasolve and Saffron Walden. They test it and then it goes back to Valent and they say to the engineer, you need to go back and flush that system. But if they can't detect another inhibitor or there's another major brand on the market they don't like because it's got another ingredient in it and they say it's not been sufficiently flushed, then you look a fool for using another brand because your customer thinks you've not flushed the system. It's just, honestly, it's a nightmare. So
Mm.
the chemical free, not trying to push it on anyone, it's just an easier way to go because you know there's nothing in the water. There's nothing you need to test. You can test for your conductivity, pH. You can test for chlorides, ions, anything like that, basic. But you know every year you're going back, there's no one's put a different additive in the system, or you don't know or what dose rate it's at. It's just simple, really.
And of course, them chemicals all end up in our, because you think how many engineers are draining down heating systems every day. I mean, ideally, in an ideal world, you don't drain your heating system down for years and
Well,
years
that's
and
part of
years.
VDI. It says that a heating system should never be filled more than 3 times, but you've got to look at VDI. When you look at the documentation, there's about 16 other standards that get work with it, and it's more geared up for district networks, bigger systems. So if you're adding a few hundred cubic meters of water, you're going to get a lot of scaling in that small plant room. We're kind of domestic, so you don't need to worry as much. So I just say to people, conditioning the water with resin. If you live in a soft water area, you might get away without using resin. So you just test for your parameters. But so when you look at the VDI document, you will go, Jesus Christ, this is a bit complex, but you don't need to follow it to the T because if you look at the back of it, it's asking you for how much water's in the system, how much top up's been added every year. And I don't know anyone domestically that's going to have a water meter on it going, right, there's 70 litres in this system. And you tell me when you go on a new build site or you're doing a refurb or a retrofit, you're going to drain that system off 3 or 4 times before you finish the job, aren't you?
Mm.
Someone's going to want the underfloor, the plant running, get the underfloor to screed dry. Decorator's going to want the rads off upstairs or the plasterer. So you're draining constantly, and that has an effect on corrosion as well. So if you're leaving radiators upside down with open to air, they can start corroding. So it's hard to follow the document. You've just got to do your best for your customer. And
And the amount of times heating systems are drained down, people go into someone's home to do a job, it might be replacing a radiator or whatever, but systems are getting drained down, and all that chemical is going into our sewage system, which then
yeah,
essentially ends up with us drinking it. So you've got all these chemicals that are having to be filtered out because obviously the stuff that goes in our sewage system is retreated.
yeah, I think that's why they don't let domestic commercial dump into drain. So when they do commercial water treatment, they filter it, clean it through for like high powerful magnets and filter systems, and then resin clean it as it's going.
Yeah, ours is all domestically goes to drain. So most people stick that there.
Yeah, yeah, to foul drain. Yeah, usually the pH neutral, apparently the
which
chemicals
is
and
which
things.
is a point I want to stress. So it's why some of you engineers decided, instinctively, something innately said, "Oh, I'd rather use a non-chemical route if a non-chemical route exists," and
Yeah,
one has been in. Lots and lots of engineering science has gone into it. The VDI stands for the German sort of Engineering Institute. That's what it stands for, sort of thing. And lots of minds, academics, and that have researched VDI. They found a better, what they, I'm not saying it's better for corrosion prevention, but just a better way, non-chemical way. And it's weird that the manufacturers in this country are so adamant that we use chemicals, have been spotted using the other system that you're interested in out in Germany. So it doesn't make sense, and sort of the marketing people in the UK have just got to realise, let's try.
Crazy, is it? Because like they all sell products in Sweden, Germany, Holland, and then they bring them over here and say you've got to put chemical in it, and it's just like, what? Well, you don't have to in the European countries, and that's a European standard.
Mm.
Well, I think most will allow it now. You've they'd have to fight a battle, wouldn't they, if they're going to start voiding warranties and prove that it's the water that's caused the problem. And do you know
Yes.
what? Dodgy water, it sells products, doesn't it?
Well, this is it.
Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? I've always said if you can keep the cogs turning, they start keep selling
Our
products.
products. I mean, that's why we had the largest gas boiler
Yeah, I
industry in
spoke
the
to
world.
an installer
2000,
the other day, and
they
he's
broke down.
on his contract the chucking diverter valves for fun in these boilers. Do you reckon it could be the inhibitor? I was like, I don't know. It could be. They could have changed the rubbers. It might not be a tested rubber at the NSF for that kind of inhibitor. And they're all on high temps, aren't they? They're not getting serviced properly. And I said to him, just try and sneak a few in without inhibitor on and see how you get on with it. See if that the it stops the products failing.
I mean, it's worth saying there's some nice people working in that chemical inhibitor industry. There is some really nice people. I mean, Dan at Fernox is a lovely person, and it's just a shame that because I use the chemical inhibitor industry as a bit of a if you're new to looking at the UK heat industry, and there's a lot of people that are, but they're looking at it very, very, very closely now, and very interested in it. You know, I use the chemical inhibitor and magnetic filter industry as a bit of an example of how marketing just quite isn't right yet. We're going through a transition. We're getting engineers inspired. They've got lots of, there's some science that just definitely says, this is how it should be done, or this is the best way it should be done. We've got lots of science, and yet because we're such this crowded, overcrowded commercial market, the UK for heating,
Yeah,
because mainly everything's been breaking down quicker than anywhere else, and so I think just some of these markets have got to change, and the chemical inhibitor market is the one I can use as sort of the big example of that. Because if they just did change and say, look, there's some engineers out there that are doing it a bit different and are using the same sort of equipment that we sell in other countries, let's support them. Let's when we do marketing material and PR stuff, let's support that there's another method that some of the
yeah,
best
definitely.
engineers are doing, and they'll be more, and if a company like Furnace did that, the good engineers, if they want to use a chemical, are more inclined to go and use that one where there's been a bit of honesty. Uh,
Yeah,
because, like I say, the marketers need to sort of stop with all the bullshit. Some of it's
yeah, it's coming because it's mentioned in the commercial documents now, and the case studies are out there, aren't they? So they will be onto it soon. The next few years, they're gonna. There's there's a document here in front of me about the University of York about their breakdowns have disappeared. I spoke to another company the other day, and they had a caretaker who was taking line strainers out of apartments, 20 a week apparently, and they've gone VDI now, and it's like one every now and again.
so just to reiterate that for the listener. So yeah, there's this is more of a commercial sector where lots of chemicals are getting used. I mean, pallet loads sometimes in these big commercial premises get dropped off by lorries. Loads of chemical going into these systems have done for years. Nothing's really happened. Still lots of corrosion, and some places have gone the VDI method, which is where you demineralize the water, test the water. When you test the water in that sort of VDI, what you're testing for, just run through what you're testing for: iron levels, pH.
Yeah, conductivity. They do say now don't test the pH at the beginning. You can test it is it 8 to 12 weeks after because they know it might be slightly low. It'll never be where it needs to be. So the system will self-alkalize and pick itself up. And usually within a year there'll be 8.5. But if it's a higher temp, you might get them into the nines. Uh, and that's it really. You can test for a basic iron test, soluble iron, see if there's any corrosion going on. Uh, if you do a new system, you might just get a little bit of flash corrosion, so you might go back and the water slightly orange. But it's obviously new panelled radiator, it's just corroding. So once the passivation layer starts, it's the corrosion process. It builds up its own protection layer. Then that orange water just disappears after a couple of weeks. And
Fatigue.
everyone's like, "Oh God, it's orange! It's orange!" Like, well, leave it a while and go back and test it, it'll be fine. And they go back the year later or a few months later and send you a sample. It's mint.
Yeah, metals build up their own protective, like copper will be of that green patina, it's called.
Yeah, and like the thing with heat pumps now, everyone's fitting line strainers, aren't they? And all these new filters coming to market with big, they need bigger. I would say you need a bigger filter with a full-on bigger mesh then, because I
Yeah.
think line strainers are causing problems with manufacturers, from what I've heard. Because
But
it
as
just
we know, that filter in an ideal world isn't picking up hardly anything because the system is super duper cleaned at the beginning, at commissioning, yeah, and yeah, then a real good method of filling it with water that you know that's going to be not detrimental to the system, which is what you people do. You test it,
yeah, yeah, resin filling.
you fill it, and you test in the water after you filled it, so you know what conductivity it is, which means how many salts are in it, which is what basically helps the corrosive process because provides an electric current path. And that's why you demineralize it because it reduces that conductivity of the water.
Most systems, if you give them a basic flush, so whatever flush you want to use, as long as it's cleaned out with mains water after, you don't really see any problems. Even if you use some inhibitors, I've flushed a load out over the years and put an inhibitor in, and I've had diverter valve issues. But I'd say to anyone, if you clean a system out with your mains flushing or power flushing, you don't really get any problems after. It's just the market of this industry is lash a boiler in, isn't it? And
Well, so it's got to be done soon because obviously it's people we say, don't we? It's the most important component of a heating system, but it's the cheapest. It's the water
yeah,
inside it because that's actually it's the energy carrier. It's mass flow rate. It's carrying the energy around,
yeah,
and the dirtier it gets, the less efficient you get. But also you're corroding components. The potential for damage and the attenuation of longevity of a heating system is massive with this water. So it's a big, big deal, which is why this market became so huge. It's why
yeah.
the chemical inhibitor market became so big and massive and powerful because there was a justified reason for it starting up and existing in the first place. Um, but and it did innovate and it did some things. But as we went to closed systems, with filling loops rather than open vented
Well,
systems.
do you know what that's what I say to people now. Half of your systems have been oxygen free or hopefully oxygen free for a good 10, 15 years now since the combis came out. So you sealed a lot off, so they're not actually that heavily corroded inside.
Well, it shouldn't be. I mean,
They
unfortunately.
shouldn't be. You say to people, and expansion is the killer, isn't it? The amount of people, even the big boys, it's who's going out and doing a full boiler service.
Mm.
And I know a lot of the housing associations, I speak to the lads day in, day out. They're not going out charging expansion vessels. And I've said to one housing association, I said, if you done a field trial and got 10 properties and serviced them boilers properly every year, or at least recharge the expansion vessels, I bet your breakdowns would not disappear, but they would drastically reduce because most of the breakdowns in domestic are due to expansion, air ingress, losing pressure. And that's the problem. We've got all these automatic filling loops, top ups, stickers on boilers now telling you how to top up. So it's basically, this is how to top a system up. Please don't call us.
Mm.
And people will get it up every week, shout downstairs. The shower's just gone off and someone will top the boiler up for them. But they're adding more bad water into the system, even if it's been treated with a decent inhibitor. They're diluting that all the time.
Yeah, no, no. The people that invented them boilers didn't invent them to be filled up by customers. Trust me. Uh,
No, especially like other hexes
that's the
now, the
whole.
small waterways and
It's the whole
places
point
get
of a
injured.
sealed system. It's sealed to atmosphere. I mean, the notion that some of they'd be rolling around in their graves, some of the forefathers of this industry, because it's became once again it's this marketing. Oh, look, there's a filling up on it. Let's tell the people
Yeah.
how they can fill up their boiler, repressurize the boiler to get it working again. But the point is, it shouldn't have lost pressure. It shouldn't have lost
Yeah, you
pressure.
expect it once, maybe once a year, but if mine never loses pressure, it gets serviced every year. I've got a landlord to do a little bit of work for. They never lose pressure because every safety check he gets a basic
Well, a
service.
lot of the reason is the expansion valves are undersized in a lot of people's systems, so the PRV will drip every now and then, and you
Yeah.
gradually lose pressure over time, and then you're topping it up, and the same. And it's just this is the thing with our systems. You've got this whole competitive market just making stuff, making stuff, making stuff. When actually, just let's stop and think, right, how does the system actually have to perform? Let's just slow it all down. We don't need to make
Yeah.
loads of stuff. Right, it needs to perform this way. It needs to perform like this. It needs to perform like that. Come to consensus, which the consensus kind of is already there. A lot of this is known physics, but we've got this industry that is just bombarding us with these market messages, and obviously some people can sort of get sift through the rubbish, but a lot of people, it's highly influential. This marketing, it's just, all marketing is
Well, when
psychological.
you speak to a lot of people, we're watching these social medias all the time, and the percentage of people that are interested in it, there's only a small percentage of the industry on social media. So the marketing companies are after the reps in the merchants and the magazines and stuff. They're the ones that are picking up, and they're the old school. There's only a small percentage of us know about all this hydronics and the nerdiness around it, and it's difficult, isn't it, trying to put a product out there and make people believe that this is the one and it
Well,
works.
a product or best practice or best method, best processes, and if manufacturers see that it is a better way of doing things, help the small minority that are trying to push best practice and inspire other people, other engineers.
Yeah.
Yeah, the big marketing giant should help that little small minority push it and say, "All right, we've discovered something. They like it. They think it's new and better. We'll help them get that message out. They don't have to change they don't have to change what they do, but just don't don't battle against us. So if we're trying to say something because it's helping other engineers and society, don't battle us. Just work with us.
Yeah, I definitely think there should be an update in the water treatment standards though for talk about flushing more and because there's not many training. People ask me for training and I find it difficult because I'm just on my own manufacturing and selling the kit and doing all the admin behind it. So it's hard for me to get away for a day. And I'd love to do training, but there's no one teaches about water in the industry, do they?
No,
And
no.
when they do, I've been on one Worcester Bosch training course, and we got there, and it was run by a bigger water treatment company, and it was just a product sales day, and it was just like even I said to Worcester when the guys were there, I said you guys sell an inhibitor and you can't test for it, so how do I fill your benchmarking? And he said I'll go away and look into that.
It's a shame you can't train people. I mean, as you say, though, you're sort of a one
Well,
entity brand.
I sell quite a few resin filling units every month, and I say to people, "What if you buy it? I'm happy to." Like I spent an hour on the phone to a bloke called Richard the other day. It's a daunting process when you look at it and you get it, and it's like computers and test pens and drop reagents, but it's a simple process. Once you've done one, you're away with it,
Mm.
and it just works. You know what I mean? I'm not a salesperson. I say to them, if you want to buy it, I will go through the process with you, and
I
I
suppose you can
am.
get. I suppose you can get some problems and challenges. So, like with the chemical inhibitor industry, one of the challenges or problems is, if someone goes to work at someone's house, they don't know what chemical was put in there by their previous person, and so they might be using a different one, and that has its own problems. Now, with the methods that you sort of advocate, you're going to get some people sort of skipping some of the testing, I suppose, aren't you, and not doing it the job as adequate as
You get
somebody else
loads
has
of
been doing.
people do buy the unit, and then they've not got a test kit. I've had people buy the competitors' units, and then they've rung me a year later. Said, "Rick, I bought this unit from the installer show or whatever. The water's doing. It looks a bit murky." I was like, "Well, what's the pH? I've not got a test kit." I was like,
Mm.
"Well, you shouldn't. You need to have a test kit to work out what's going on." So I say to people, test kit's your first point. You might live in a lovely part, even like Birmingham's got some nice sort of soft water areas because it's fed off Welsh water. So you might get away with not resin filling, but get a test kit and then take the stages, and then you can progress into resin filling if you want to.
Mm.
But I say to people, yeah, what's the average heat pump install cost? You're not going to get much for what, 10, 15 grand these days.
Mm. Yeah,
So
you might as well
it's
look
not a lot
after
of
it.
money. Do the best for your customer. And it's a simple.
Yeah, if you're a customer, you want it to last as long as possible, don't you?
Yeah, then you start chucking all these chemicals in. You can't monitor them, and then something goes tits up, something blocks them. Do you know what our problem is? Summertime, so next few weeks people are going to be backing the heating systems off, and the amount of underflow that's going in these days, we're going to be in the shit in the future with biological outbreaks because it thrives in the right temperature. And I say to people, I've said to manufacturers, we should be running anti-stagnation programs, not just on your. And they're like, yeah, but we do. We spin the pump every 24 hours. It's like, yeah, but the radiator, the arse end of the property is not going to see that pump spin at all. It's not going to feel any movement in water just because you spun a pump for 3 seconds. Can we not tell that heat pump or boiler to fire up for 20 minutes once a week, open all zone valves, but not get the compressor or the burners fired? So it's just moving the water about, and it just gives it that bit more chance of not fouling up, if you know what I mean. Because I seen a picture on social media the other day, like a press fitting, and it crimped the pipe inside. It was like a frigging thing that your little kids pop the shapes into, and you could literally see the rubber seal. And I was like, that's the perfect place for an outbreak. There, it's on the rubber. It's got a big gap. The shit's gonna sit in there. Then it's just gonna outbreak if it gets the right temperature. And you can't test for outbreak. You can't test for biological growth unless you get an incubator. And then you what 300-400 quid into it. You've got a test on site. You've got to get it into its incubation stage, 30 something degrees straight away, and leave it for a couple of days. But we ain't doing that domestically, I can tell you now. We can't even test for inhibitor, never mind test for biological growth. So maybe, yeah, if manufacturers are listening, maybe look at the process, and surely we can do it with all the
So what's
technology out there, can't we?
what's the big ask? So the big ask, I suppose, from you for the manufacturers is help us all by getting some data on your bottles. I mean, there's a lot of bottles. A lot of people making stuff. I mean, like I say, there's all sorts of
Yeah, so
people
I
making it
think
for
when
other people as well, isn't there?
I remember sitting in the group and people said to me, install, I'll go into the installer show. So I got a QR app, took a load of QR codes from people saying, what do we do if there's no mains pressure? So I took a QR code of a pump they can use to pump water out of a vessel. And everyone's like, fucking you're all over these QR codes. Like, it's the way forward, QR codes. And I say to people now, just if you can put a QR code on a bottle of inhibitor, so if the manufacturer listening, it's so simple, isn't it? It's put a QR code on the bottle of inhibitor to link to your test kit and a link to the data to a website page of how to test for this inhibitor.
Oh, it must be so
What's
simple.
it
I
going
mean,
to take?
I use an app. Well, it's your daughter's birthday today, so my daughter and I, when we go shopping, my daughter's 12. We use this app called Yucca, and because she's sort of getting into makeup and sort of all that kind of thing. So you can take it, you scan the barcode on this makeup, and it tells you whether it's good or bad or excellent.
Yeah,
It does all the chemical analysis of it. It's brilliant. You do it with food as well because she's actually worked. She's clever because she's worked out if something actually does come up excellent, Dad's likely to buy it, and
that's fine.
she's actually had something bought for her, so she's quite into it. But because I mean, there's a lot of crap out there.
It's like
Um,
everything in it. But yeah, if the manufacturers, it's just put a QR code, a link to a website page saying you need to test for this every year. It's a link to a test kit in it, where to buy it. So they're selling more products then. Because there's a tool station inhibitor. I spoke to the company who made it, and he said, "Oh, you don't need to test for our inhibitor because it's NSF approved." I was like, "Well, Part L says you do, and the British standard says you do." And he went, "Well, you don't."
Well, I think they're getting there a bit. Their hair. What's the phrase I'm looking for? They're getting a bit confused, aren't they? When you've said you want to be able to test for the inhibitor in someone's system, they're selling an inhibitor, and they think that word test means the inhibitor is being tested to be good enough to sell in the UK, which
Yeah,
it has to go through its UCAS testing. That's where I think the confusion may have come from. They don't realise that when it's in a system, it's incumbent on the person in commissioning the system and going to that system to test the water. That is actually, part of commissioning.
yeah.
But
If you if
they
you've
haven't
added
made
an
it easy.
inhibitor to a system, you're meant to test for the dosage rate after you've commissioned that. There's no one saying that circulate around for an hour. There's no guidance of when to test, how to test. So why don't they include a little couple of test strips with the inhibitor they sell each bottle?
Hmm.
If you've got a test for it, it's a confusing market, and I suppose when you're only you're a bit of a nerd, you kind of understand it and things like that. But mine was, like I say, Thoroughflush just went to market one day, and I just try and help people out because I've been through the struggles of.
Well, you've done well, Ricky. You're a credit. I mean, I don't know if you've won any awards. I mean, you and I probably
You
think
know
that.
what? I've never put in for awards. I've
Well,
never
the
put a
awards
table
thing's a
on.
bit of a funny
No,
thing.
I keep myself to myself. I do my bit on social media.
Well, you've done a good thing. You, like I say, a lot of good engineers out there use your
Yeah,
Thoroughflush
we've
kit.
sold a good few thousand flushes now and
They love it.
bits of
Yeah,
accessories, and I just try and it's a simple and effective way, isn't it? Like you say, people can they can see the flow through the system. If a circuit's blocked, it's visually you can see it visually when the flow diminishes. If check valves on, you might have to set it up the wrong way, and they found an old check valve in a system and kinked pipes, and it definitely unblocks under the floor when nothing else will touch it.
yeah.
I've got a video to put out. I need to make it actually. I fitted a boiler a couple of weeks ago for a landlord, and there was a 10 mil circuit blocked, and nothing would touch it, not even an air pump. And I put the Thoroughflush on, and it got it within, say, 2 minutes of flushing it back and forth. It had cleared that blockage out. So I need to
Well,
make
it's
that.
meant your mains flushing equipment is mentioned in this new book that's coming out, is it? This new heat pump book by James Law and Lewis.
Yeah, I
Um,
believe so. Yeah, yeah. So it works, doesn't it? People love it, and it's convenient, it's compact, it's cheap.
and there's another book out that came out just before that, a couple of months ago, by John. What's it called? Welcome to the World of Heat Pumps, I think he's called
Yeah,
his.
I've not seen that one. I know I spoke to James about the book and hopefully get a copy. I don't know if they've been sold, haven't they? I don't know if they've been sent out yet. So hopefully I'll get that. And James Law's not James. Lewis is now working for Adam, isn't he?
He's a heat geek, yeah. He's
Yeah,
now
so he's
a heat
gone to
geek.
Heat Geek. I think he's taking all the staff on, aren't they? You'll have a job there soon.
I'm pretty independent. Well, I mean, that's one of the interesting things about this industry. I mean, I had a meeting today with Hive and Era. Um,
You'll get
similar
assassinated
to what
one day.
you are.
You get assassinated one day, you.
Well, no, because they don't, I don't say anything that's dishonest. No, it was a really good meeting. Really impressed with Tom Pakenham
Doing
from
it for
Hive.
humans, as Damo says, aren't you?
You are.
You're doing it for the humans, as Damo says.
I'm doing it for this. I don't know if I'm that altruistic, but no, it was a really good meeting. I mean, I said to them, well, I mainly listened in that meeting. It was nice to hear their stories, and I mean, I like Air. I like the whole thing of the Swedish thing because that's a connection to my heating background. Hive, obviously, we know it's got a problem, but as we all know as well, there's a lot of potential with Hive because it is in 2 million homes. People have got an app, and I think there's some good stuff it can be done in the background. So it's going to be good for
The
me to
thing is,
learn.
with Hive, you don't know what they're doing in the background. They've probably got some
Well,
nerdy people,
they've got some good people, and I really like this meeting today.
and they're not
And
just going to walk away from the industry, say it doesn't work. They're going to develop, aren't they? And it's
well,
going to.
what I said to them is, and they all agreed. I said it's just getting the right marketing message out because I think Hive could be doing some home energy management systems type stuff, and they're working with Air and some stuff, and I think that's going to be quite good. And I think if you want to promote, and I'll help promote them as well. But just let's be honest with the story. There's so many people now understanding the science of heat, consumers and good engineers.
Yeah.
We know they now know that Hive could only turn the boiler on and off. So just hold your hands up, and say, look, we kind of got that bit wrong, and
Well, haven't they gone open firm now?
it's great that they have now. They've changed.
Yeah.
It's the new one, and we've realised that all the good engineers and people that want are learning about how heating should actually go into a home at steady state, and move on. And it's when different sectors battle, which is what the chemical industry has done. They've never once said, "Oh, it's really quite inspiring that some of the engineers out there are really into water treatment and controlling corrosion." It's really inspiring to see it, and they're using the system that we've got out in Germany. But don't tell anyone we do it because we've got this chemical market to protect over here. Um, I mean, it's as if they're all waiting for each other to make the move because as well as I do, Ricky, once one brings their product to market in this country,
Oh, they'll all be on it straight away as
they'll all
soon as
be
it
on it.
hits the shelves. Because I know
Oh,
Sentinel, they sell a resin filling unit in Europe as well. I've seen when a Magnetic approached me years ago, I looked into it, and so it does work there. But I think once it's like anything, once it hits the shelf in the UK, there it's
yeah,
in the
Sentinel's
average.
parent company. I mean, I should
Yeah,
say,
my product got bought by one of the big boys straight away. As soon as I put it on the market, they took it into their R&D department, and they made me quite aware of it by putting all the names on the
yeah,
on
their
the
parent company
place of the order.
sells it in other countries. I'm trying to think who Sentinel's parent company is.
Sentinel bought by Alberta. Is it the
Alberta, I
Alberta group? Is it Alberta?
think so.
So it's quite funny last year because one side of the installer show, Sentinel selling their product, and then you go down the other end, which was the Flamco, and they that's the same group, and they've bought. Is it BW? Not BWS. BW. Oh, I can't remember the name. they sell resin filling units in Germany. They used to rebrand for Spirotech. So the Alberta group have bought them. So one side of the company's selling resin and VDI, promoting VDI, the other's selling the inhibitor. It's a bit
Well,
of a,
good on you, Ricky, for what you're doing for this industry. Lots of people have learned from you. Good on you for that, and keep up the good work. Keep up the good fight, buddy. Thanks
yeah,
for
I do
coming
my
on the
best,
show.
mate. Just keep plodding on, you know.
And you got any more marathons to run? You like your marathons,
Yeah,
don't
we're done Reading on half marathon on Sunday. I might try and get in Prague next Friday. Uh,
you? Yeah,
and
good on you, mate.
Bracknell in a couple of weeks, and then I think that's it. I'll do one in summer, maybe Venice or something.
Well,
Good
it's
for the
nice.
mind, mate. It's good for your mental health, innit?
Yep, they say it is. So I do a lot of walking. Well, it was great having you come on the show. Thank you ever so much, Ricky. And I'll just rename my sponsor again, which is Dave Smith at Primary Pro, which is a professional pipe work lagging system that a lot of the good engineers that Ricky and I know are using on the outside primary pipe work from the heat pumps. And it started off as Condensate Pro, so a lot of the boiler condensate pipes use this stuff as well. Great little innovation. Ricky, thanks ever so much. See you soon, buddy.
Cheers, Nathan. Thank you.